Hey everyone, Mr. and Mrs. Spicy Toast here,
Hello!
and today we're going to be talking about Starfield. But first, just as kind of a roundup, last episode, we were talking about Armored Core and trying to convince the wife to give it a shot. So you have now, what do you think about the game?
Well, it is not a game for me. I was trying out the tutorial and I did not like the whole cinematic crash scene. I thought it was very lacking in just anything. It was really dull. When moving around, I don't like the high speed. It's harder to control with just your normal AWD movements. And so I didn't like it. I shot most people from afar instead of going up, which is not usually my play style, but there was nothing motivating me to get closer. Why not shoot them from afar where they can't really get to me? So then I got to the first boss and ran out of all my rockets because of that. So I learned that hard way. But I definitely is not it's not my game. It's not my game. I tried it though.
Yeah, I was watching her play through the first mission. Normally, she was like outside of lock-on range for any of her weapons, so she was just firing them from like across the map, trying to hit people.
I hit them, and I was successful at killing all of them.
Right. Also, she would just spam her rockets. So literally, I don't think she got to use a single rocket by the time it came to the boss. She was like, "Why are my rockets not working?" And it was like, "There's an ammo count, and you used them all before."
I don't like that it went away though. It was on my shoulder. Like you can just tell me I'm out of ammo. I like the look of it. That was a letdown and be like, why is my shoulder thing not there? Where is it?
Yeah, when you run out of ammo, it falls off because you don't need it anymore. So that was interesting. Also hilarious because the game is about being fast speed, and she would normally just sit down like a turret and shoot at enemies as they're just directly hitting her, and she's just not even trying to move.
I don't like moving. I mean, there was one point where I was trying to figure out what button they had told me how to heal because it could come across the screen, but I didn't read it fully. All I could remember was a C, so I tried hitting the control button, which shot me off of this like high in the air area. So then I'm like falling through the air to nothing because I didn't expect to get just shot off the edge of it. So yeah, I don't like the high speed. I wish the walking was faster, or there was a way to like run without the rockets. It's like a higher speed, but not this. Just yeah, no, I just didn't like it. I don't have a way to say it, but
So yeah, that game, she tried it out, definitely didn't click with her. She didn't defeat the final boss, it just kind of rage quit. So that's definitely not a game for everyone, and while I really, really enjoyed it, she didn't like it. And it's kind of funny because there's a lot of elements that I really liked about the game, but she didn't. So for one, the first episode, it's kind of a mystery of you don't know who your character is, you don't know why you're on this planet, and for her, she was wondering like, oh, there's no hook to the game, there's nothing that's really interesting me in keep playing it. But for me, it's like the hook is the fact that you don't know what's going on. You're trying to figure that out.
but there wasn't even anything pretty. I remember when I first got there and I'm just walking around a bunch of pipes and it's like, why do I care? There's nothing leading me any direction, so I'm just finding an opening in the pipes, jumping up different ledges, but it's like nothing's intriguing about this world at all. It was lame, is what I call it, lame.
So yeah, that was her experience with Armored Core. But let's move on and talk about Starfield. Again, we'll start off with showing her some of the different trailers so she can ask what the game was really about. And then I'll kind of just go through, talk about the game, and kind of give some comparisons to some other games where I think the game really is lacking, or maybe some areas that it really does well. We will be talking about some spoilers here. Now, we're not going to be trying to intentionally spoil things, but if there's something we need to talk about that happens to be a spoiler, we will be talking about it. So there's going to be a couple quests and stuff that get spoiled. So if you don't want to see any of that, then definitely turn away now. All right, let's start off with the teaser trailer. They're left out Fallout 76 there.
Seals are intact. Clear still go.
They say, the wonder is, not that the field of stars is so vast, but that we have measured it. You're part of Constellation now. Part of our family. What you've found, it's the key to unlocking everything.
We reach your constellation.
This is all we've been working towards.
Jemison route looks good.
We've come to the beginning of humanity's final journey.
Prepare for departure. Graviton loop array full on check. Your space lane is clear.
That's why we're here.
Main engines go. Ignition.
To discover what's out there.
Good luck, Constellation. You are go for launch.
All right, so that was the teaser trailer. What did you think about it?
I liked it a whole lot better than any teaser trailer of the last game, for sure. I'm very intrigued about it. I like those little things that they had on the edges as you just walk through a hallway. Just gives you a little bit more peek into their world. Like, I am very intrigued by it. And I've seen the logo, but I didn't know the logo like spun like that too to make the whole circle. So I thought that was a really cool ending.
That, I will say, is pretty indicative of in-game footage. It does look pretty similar to that, and a lot of the items you're seeing after playing the game are items you're going to be using all the time. So they actually did a pretty good job of really showing you what the world was actually going to be like. That ship, that's the first ship you get pretty much right when you start the game. So it is actually pretty indicative of what you're going to see in the game. All right, let's go look at the gameplay trailer here.
Humanity has always hunted for knowledge in the unknown. The wonder is, not that the field of stars is so vast, but that we have measured it. We're all here because we're committed to the biggest question of all. What's out there? You're part of Constellation now. Part of our family.
Shocking lack of gameplay in the gameplay trailer so far.
We do not fully understand all that is at work here.
No finer group in the stars to be unraveling this mystery.
I'll follow you from here on out, Captain.
Grab jump is ready. I love this part.
These artifacts could be everything we've been looking for. Another great secret the universe is asking us to unravel.
Human settlements throughout the galaxy could be at risk.
We are not stopping. Whatever lies at the end of this road will change humanity forever. This is where we belong.
Okay. So yeah, lack of gameplay for the most part, but the way that the music and the voice acting of the narration is, it makes it seem like she's very passionate about it. It makes you want to feel passionate about it, but I'm also getting a lot of like No Man's Sky vibes from it.
So it's very different. Like you think they're a lot similar. Yeah, that was like a decent trailer, but as far as being a gameplay trailer, there was like 10 to 5 seconds of actual gameplay in there, which is pretty bad for a 3-minute trailer, essentially. So the No Man's Sky, they play very, very differently. For one, No Man's Sky, broad universe, you can go all over the place, and there's a lot of crazy aliens, and you can land on any planet you want, take off from any planet. Whereas here, you can technically land on most of the planets, but you've played No Man's Sky, at least briefly. You can get in your ship and just take off and fly anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Here, if you get in your ship and take off, it's a loading animation that takes you into space.
Okay.
So that really breaks your sense of immersion. I played No Man's Sky also a decent amount, so being able to actually fly your ship and fly it around a planet and land exactly where you want is really fun. That's really not something you can do here. Technically, you can choose where on the planet you want to land from space, but there's no going from space directly to landing. There's a loading screen there that cuts that off, which is quite sad. So it plays very, very differently from No Man's Sky. It is a definitely interesting game. It has a lot of positive attributes, but it is a little bit on the negative side when you start comparing it to a lot of other games. So that was the main trailers. Let's actually talk about the game, and I'll just put up some of my own gameplay here. Alright, here we just have me exploring a planet, and I'll just go through and kind of talk about how the game functions, and feel free to ask any questions. So it is a role-playing game, so you're trying to really get into this world, and normally there's going to be a lot of talking to people, and generally these games are about playing the way you want to play, a lot of player choice, because that's all a part, role-playing, you want to play a specific role. Here, it's generally a first-person shooter. There are technically melee weapons, not really great to use in my experience. And you start off, you're just a miner, you mine up a crazy artifact like you saw in some of those trailers, and that directly leads you to join this group called Constellation, because they're trying to go through the universe, uncover its mysteries, and these weird artifacts kind of have to deal with that. So that's a general premise of the story. You're going around the universe with this group, looking for some different MacGuffins to try to further along the plot. Overall, the story is decent enough, not really too crazy. It does have some twists and turns in there that, well, some of them are decent, some you'll, definitely be able to call coming. But the ending is actually pretty good, which leads directly into the New Game Plus, which is very well done narratively. Won't really spoil exactly how it works, but you're able to start over again with all of your skills, so all of your talent points that you've put in, but your whole inventory is wiped. So you kind of start the game over again, but you have some of your progression from the last time. So it's actually a pretty good system, and the fact that it ties in narratively is really well done. So that's the general plot of it, but when you're actually playing it, there's a lot of roadblocks in the way, a lot of loading screens. Really has an issue with immersion because, like I talked about before, you really have a lot of just loading screens that get in your way from you continually doing something. So like No Man's Sky, you can seamlessly go from planet to space and just be traveling the whole universe like that. Really can't do that here. You just have to constantly go in from loading screen to loading screen. Even when you dock your ship, you can manually choose to get up from your chair, walk manually out of your ship, or you can just choose to immediately be teleported out of your ship. So if you want to intentionally limit yourself, you can do that, but most people, even if that will give them a better experience, they're not going to want to waste their time. They're just going to be teleporting in and out of their ship or teleporting across the entire universe, because once you've been someplace, you can just immediately teleport back. So there is some, like, warp travel like there are in a lot of different games, but that's really only for the first time you go there. After that, you're just constantly fast traveling everywhere, and you're really not even using your ship all that much, which is a little disappointing, and really, just tends to break your sense of immersion, which you want to have in these role-playing games.
So, in the trailers it said it was in the making for 25 years. Does that mean they've spent 25 years making this game?
Yes and no. 25 years in the making, that's probably like 25 years ago is when they first wrote down their idea for the game.
Okay.
It's not like they've been designing, programming, and doing all of that like hard work on the game. It's just they've been starting to, that's when they first came up with it, started doing storyboarding, started like writing out the plot, like the very, very beginnings of the game. So they've been working on this for a long time, but that's actually pretty sad when you look at this game compared to games that came out even years ago, and the quality really isn't there as much.
Yeah, this is what I'm noticing is like the planet and the skyline. I'm not sold on it. I don't like that there's not as much atmospheric depth in the coloration. Even the sky, like you only get a bit of shadows over the stars on the very peak of that horizon line. Otherwise, the stars are just as bright as they are above. And everyone who's looked at the sky knows that the horizon line looks very different than when you look straight up ahead. And it's feeling cheaper. So for like other games like Horizon, you can see the depth in the world. You see that somebody has observed a real world and done it. And that planet was also like, it's like you take one picture of a couple different rocks and you copy and paste it over and over and over. It seemed very dull. So maybe this is just a planet that they don't care about, that they're not putting the time into. But this is not the best first impression on how they create their landscaping.
Well, so there are, they say, like 1,000 planets. So they're not all going to look like this. However, a lot do look fairly barren like this. And even the ones that do have trees or coloration, most of the planets are made through procedural generation with maybe things put here and there that are maybe handcrafted. Actually, so this is the lock picking system. This one took me a long time, so I'm actually going to skip ahead a little bit because it took me a while to work on that one, and I didn't even bother because I wasn't wanting to pay attention. But that really also ruins the desire to continue exploring the world, because even though there's literally limitless things you can go and look at, you know that they're just not handcrafted. It's just more and more procedural generation. And while the procedural generation for the most part isn't bad, the fact that you're not going across something handmade really limits the amount you want to explore. It's like, yes, there are so many different outposts and stuff, you can go and do it, but it's kind of just like, why bother?
Yeah, I'm finding that a lot more with procedural generated games, that I'm not getting the same level of care that I would want in a game, because I don't say that the planet has to be colorful, but it doesn't look real because there's such a lack in either texture or in the lighting, or simply shading has a lot to do with some of it, especially with that sky that I was talking about. you notice that something's wrong. You notice that something's wrong. You're not wanting to stare at it like you can in other games. And now that you say it's procedurally generated, it makes sense that that's why I don't care enough to stare at it, because I've seen it once and now I feel like I don't need to go look at it any other part. It's all going to look the same. I can, yeah.
That's also kind of ties into one issue with the game is somewhat the lack of quality. So I will say this is one of their least buggy releases pretty much ever. Now there are still bugs here, but normally Bethesda games are much worse. But that being said, the game, while it came out, it doesn't feel like a next-gen game. It doesn't feel incredible. It doesn't feel like it's pushing the boundary in really any way. And when they say, like, oh, it's been in development for 25 years, you're like, wow, that means it must be really, really good. But there's been plenty of videos out there. We could pull them up. I don't know if we will here, but there's been videos comparing this to, like, Cyberpunk 2077, which came out, I don't know, roughly 3 years ago, I think. Don't quote me on that. It's somewhere around there. But it came out years ago. And while that game was a buggy disaster when it came out, looking at the quality of the game and how people actually interact, how immersive the world is, like, in that game, very easy example, you pull out your gun and point at someone's head, everyone reacts, they start running away, they're all freaking out because you just pointed a gun at them. Here, I actually have a clip of it that I'll go and pull up. So right here, I'm running around with my gun out, which even in other games, other Bethesda games, people would react, at least like in Skyrim. Here, shooting right next to a cop. Cop does not care at all. No one reacts. No one cares. It just makes the world feel kind of dead. Here's someone that accidentally shot in the face, so now everyone is reacting. But honestly, these people should have been reacting before when I was shooting at everyone.
Yeah, that makes you kind of feel invisible as a character. Like, why am I here? No one cares. Yeah, I don't like that either.
Also, here's something where I'm going to go through and explore some of the different, well, the residential district, because one thing I noticed with this game is I spent a lot of time exploring the handcrafted elements. Like, okay, these major cities, this is where they put their time and effort into. Let's look and try to see what I can find. So here, there's a bunch of these big residential apartment buildings, and I wanted to see what awesome stories I would come across by going into these apartment buildings. Now, spoiler alert, there's essentially nothing in any of them. So this is the first major city, if you don't know. But for all these, you go in, you go on the elevator, there's one floor, and you can't even go to that. For all the ones that I found, there was essentially only one room I could actually break into, and there was nothing in that room. Now, you compare this to something like Knights of the Old Republic, which is a very, very old game, released a long time ago. And that game, the apartment buildings, you would go in and there would be cops harassing people and you could choose to intervene. Well, not cops, they were the Sith troopers, but essentially law enforcement was harassing people, you could choose to intervene. You'd be breaking into people's apartments. You might find someone that has a bounty on their head that they threaten you to leave, otherwise they're going to attack you because they think you're there to collect the bounty. So you can leave them alone, choose to help them and maybe clear that bounty, or you can choose to just kill them and collect the bounty. Again, different options you can find. Or there's just different people that they don't know who you are, but they're afraid of you because you're breaking into their house, and so like, hey, here's money, just leave me alone. Like, different things that can happen. Whereas here in this game, there was nothing. Now, I'm sure some of these will be used for quests later, but the fact that I can't just stumble across some interesting thing without a quest is pretty sad and disappointing. And also, talking about Knights of the Old Republic, they had a much better companion system than in here. So in this game, there's a bunch of different companions. They essentially are just pack mules. You use them to carry stuff around. You can talk to them, though, try to have, a conversation with them, but generally they're just fine. They'll assist you in combat, but the main issue here is that they are all morally good. So if you want to play with companions, you have to play in a morally good way. Now, Knights of the Old Republic, it was very good about this, where there was morally good characters, there was morally evil characters, so they would be pushing you to commit evil acts and not be nice to people, whereas the good characters would try to push you towards being good. They wouldn't like it if you did something evil. But there was also neutral characters that just didn't care whatsoever about what you did one way or the other. And there was even some characters that, while they might be initially leaning one direction, you can either push them to be more of that, either more good or more evil, or you can push them towards the other direction and actually influence your characters to change their opinion and act in a different way. So you can have a lot more consequences and depth with how you want to play. Here, though, really you have to be morally good, at least if you want to play with any of the companions. Otherwise, the companions will just get upset at you, which is pretty annoying.
Also, as you can see, we're walking around a lot of, like, different greenery and stuff like that, and it feels like they're putting all of their textures into these, like, copper metal reflections, and other things are really flat and boring. Like, I definitely have a bias towards nature, and I look at the texture of nature more often, and looking at these trees, they look like plastic. They all look like fake shrubbery to me, which is such a big thing. It's like what I was saying in the world, something looks off. So whoever did their texture or detailing on their artwork, it doesn't make it feel like a now game, a next-gen game, a new game. I've seen way better work than this. And so if this is their main city that they should have had a whole lot more time on, I am disappointed. It seems like all they're caring about is the metal reflection, and that is it.
Speaking of reflection, so here is the one apartment building that you can break into. In here, you'll see that there's a mirror. Now, the sad thing about the mirror is it has no reflection.
You're not in it?
No. You're not in any reflections at all anywhere in the game, as far as I've been able to find.
Oh, things like this, so just, they break you out of the game. It doesn't feel like you're in it as a part of it. It's the same thing with shooting next to the cop. Why are you even in this game if they don't care? That's terrible.
Also, if you look at this apartment, well, there's the mirror.
That's so... It doesn't even reflect the rest of the bathroom wall. That's terrible.
Most of it doesn't really feel lived in. Like, they do have some things here or there, but I go through, I open up the fridge, there's nothing in the fridge, another mirror there that you weren't in, or reflective surface. Here, look, oh, what's in these progress reports?
Nothing. No, that could have been such a story element that they could have added.
So, like, you probably have to break in here for a quest later, but it just feels so empty. Well, like, even checking the fridge, there's nothing there. Like, this feels like a showroom. It doesn't feel like an actual lived-in apartment.
Well, even if it is something that, like, you're not supposed to find yet, they should have the things still in there, because sometimes it's the fun part of finding the story broken apart and then trying to piece it back together to make sense of it.
Well, so one thing I mentioned in the review, which you didn't watch yet, bad on you, but I stumbled across a story spot before I was supposed to. So in that area, there was a suspicious-looking wall in an underground cave network, and it really seemed like there should be something there. And so I tried to blow up the wall, tried to get through it, because it seemed very out of place. I couldn't get through it at all, and then later in the story, they sent me back there. This time, since I was on the story quest, that wall was missing. So going in and looking at that location, the fact that I was already there earlier, and I could have gotten the MacGuffin that the story needed, and the fact that I could have found it early, brought it back, that could have been a really fun moment to me. But instead, the developers went and just literally put up a fake wall to keep me from finding the thing early. They didn't want me to find it early at all. And that's just really sad and really kind of shows a lack of creativity, or just so many constraints are in this game to make you play it the way the developers wanted you to play it. Here I'm on another planet. As you see, most planets and moons just look very barren, and that's, yeah, generally the case for most of the ones that I've found, at least, in my different playthroughs.
And I get when you're thinking about a moon, you don't think about it having that much stuff on it. But it's a game. It doesn't have to be completely 100% realistic as far as, like, every moon just needs to be dulled. And, yeah, this is fine. That's really all I have to say right now. It's nothing intriguing. Even landing, I was like, wow, a lot of these rocks seem very similar. There's no, like, land point or landmark to give you any direction of what part could be interesting to explore. So there's nothing that I saw other than this little base here that would intrigue me to walk around this planet.
I will say, though, the shooting and the different variety of guns is actually fairly satisfying. That is one thing that they did a pretty good job on. A lot of different guns in the game, and they do feel pretty good to use. One sad element about this world, though, so they went for an approach that is much more similar to Dune. Now, I really like what I'm about to discuss, but I think they didn't do it in a good way. So, if you compare this game to something like Mass Effect, there's a whole bunch of crazy aliens. Yeah, I thought this thing was adorable.
Yeah, what was that machine, though, too, that we passed when we first came in? It seemed very out of place. Yeah, no.
What, the snack machine?
Yeah. I want to look at it more.
It's just a convenience or, like, soda machine. They're just scattered around in different bases and stuff.
Okay, sorry. I interrupted you, though.
Anyway, so yeah, games like Mass Effect, there's a lot of crazy aliens, a lot of alien technology going on, and that is very interesting and can be very compelling, figuring out what's going on in this universe, what's with all these crazy aliens. I like how this guy just noped out of there. He just immediately was like, nope, I'm out of here.
Just jumped, yeah.
This game, generally speaking, I won't say for certainty because that's part of the story, but everyone you're interacting with, for the most part, is all human. There aren't any aliens here. Now, this can be very good, especially for universes such as Dune, where since everyone is human, but maybe from different planets, you can understand everyone's motivation, and it can be a much more personal and interesting story because it's not alien. It's so much more understandable. There's not all these questions on maybe this race is a certain way, maybe they act a certain way, maybe they're different. No, everyone's human. You understand everyone's motives for why they're doing what they're doing. The problem is the character design isn't compelling enough to really make use of that. Like, sure, everyone's human here, but they don't really tell the compelling stories that really take use of that. So they're really losing that element of benefiting from everyone being human and not having a whole bunch of just, like, crazy aliens and stuff like that.
Can we scoot that back to a little bit to see those little bottles sitting on? It's like little details like this bother me so much because, like, you went through the time to add it. Pause it there. Look how little amount of detail. Those look like a blurry, flat image, other than that one little speck of a highlight. Like, if you go through the details of adding things to an environment, make it worthwhile. Otherwise, why is it there? This doesn't look like a game that has been developed for 25 years.
That is really the biggest issue with it. It's a very hyped game, one of the biggest game releases of the year. A lot of people looking forward to it. But if you're expecting the next game of the year, if you're expecting a very high quality game, this really isn't it. The game is fine. That is the best way to describe it. Like, I'm sure people are going to have a lot of fun with it, especially if you just want to go in, play forever by just exploring all the procedurally generated stuff. If you're fine with that, you're going to have a lot of fun here. Also, if you're just fine with doing all the quests the way the developers intended, yeah, that'll be great. If you're not someone that's trying to look for like loopholes or try to play in a different, interesting way, then yeah, you're gonna have a good time here. Shooting is solid, but it's really just fine. Not overly compelling, really, in any way. There was nothing that this game did that seemed better than any other game. Like, there's a lot of other games you could compare it to where those games do something better. There's nothing stand out here. It's just fine.
So you had originally said that this is a role play game, and that's why I'm like such a big thing on like how does it look, because that keeps you in the game role wise and doesn't break your focus about who your character is. And so if I see something like I want to sit down in the chair, I want to interact with it, I want to do something with that, if it's a role playing game. So would this better be described as a shooter game instead?
I mean, I would want people to go into this very much knowing and just thinking of it as a FPS, as a first-person shooter, that is a broad world that you can do a lot of stuff in, because that is more of what this is. If you try to go in playing melee, trying to go playing like really stealth build, and using a lot of different abilities, that's not really going to be here. There are some abilities that I didn't touch on in the review. You do get some space magic powers, but they're decent, they're good, but it's not like you're going to play as a space wizard. That's not what's going to be going on here. You're still playing as a shooter. The little powers you get, like they give you wall hacks so you can see people that are, but you can see people through walls, so that's very handy for a shooter. Or you can go ahead and reduce gravity to really screw over your opponent. But yeah, there's nothing here that's really too crazy.
What's going on there?
Kind of story stuff that I'm not going to talk about.
Okay. So I'm definitely going to try to change my frame point then, because like when you said roleplay, that I'm really looking through this game as a roleplay game, and there's a lot of elements I'm looking for that I'm disappointed in. So I'm going to try to not think through that, and I'll take it as a shooter game, and maybe I'll view it in a bit more of a positive light then. The lasering in those like 9 or so dot square is kind of cool. It does look like it shoots well. I'm gonna reframe my mind. Maybe that'll help.
Well, that's the issue though, is it is still supposed to be a role-playing game. Like, it plays best as a shooter, but it is still a role-play game, which is very disappointing. Because, yeah, role-play games normally all about immersion, all about choice, and to me, this game really ends up lacking in both of those, which is rather sad. One thing I will say, though, is that the game does have outposts. You would probably be really interested in the outposts. The game never utilizes them. There's really no point to ever use them. For me, I just used it as a place to dump all of my resources I didn't want to carry with me. But you can build outposts. You can make them look exactly how you want. There's a lot of different, decoration.
So base building?
Yeah, there is base building. Is there much of a point to it? Not really. You can set it up to somewhat automatically gather some resources for you. You can have people that work in it trying to, make some passive income or passive progression. But the game, you never really need to use it at all. I set up a brief one and then really never needed to touch it again, which was rather disappointing.
I think maybe that's why that gameplay trailer didn't use a lot of gameplay, because the trailer aspect of it was the roleplay part, but the gameplay is more shooter part, and it was conflicting. So maybe that's why the trailer was the way it was.
Well, just the game has a real issue with lack of creativity. So, yeah, there's not a lot of player choice. There's several elements, or there's several times throughout the game where you are on an enemy ship and you need to escape it. And you're able to do that, but one thing I would really want to be able to do is sabotage the enemy ship before you could leave it, so that they're not going to immediately be able to attack and blow you up. So when you are on an enemy ship, there's really nothing you can do. There's a lot of locked doors, and there's nothing really interesting that you can do. You can kill crew members, but sometimes that's not even enough, because this game brings forward one of the most annoying systems of the past, which is the fact that you can't kill main characters. You can't kill specific people. There are some characters that the game marks as important, and you're just not able to kill them. If you shoot them, they will pop right back up. This was really annoying for the Crimson Fleet, the sort of pirate mission, which a lot of people say is like the best. Now, for that, you get essentially kidnapped by law enforcement, and they want you to go undercover. And you can pretty much tell them to F off and say that you're not going to work with them. And there's dialogue options for that, saying, yeah, now I'm going to kill you all, or now like I'm just not going to do what you want. So I did those dialogue options, and I slaughtered everyone on this ship, but the captain and like 4 other members of the crew you were unable to kill. So they would just go on the ground, pop back up. Also here in this, what you're seeing, I kept looking at the other guy because he just, again, did not care the fact that I was killing or trying to kill the person right next to him. So I come over, even start teabagging the guy, and yeah, he does not care at all. Anyways, for this Crimson Fleet mission, I go through, I kill the captain, or try to kill the captain and all the crew, and then maybe, go and meet up with the Crimson Fleet and think that it's going to be awesome, but I'm unable to kill the captain, unable to kill like 3 or 4 other members of his crew, and so I try to leave the ship. This was where I explored the whole ship, see if I could sabotage it in any way, so that like maybe I could turn off their turrets, disable their engines, do anything like that. That wasn't the case. I'm able to leave, board my ship. As soon as I get on my ship, I'm surrounded, like I'm in the middle of a fleet of enemy ships. And so my ship gets absolutely annihilated time over time, and the captain calls me on the radio being like, you think you could escape or whatever, which is really, really annoying, because this is someone I defeated in combat over and over again, but the game wouldn't let me actually kill him. So it turned what is one of the better quest lines in the entire game, and just made me incredibly frustrated with the game. And I just stopped playing for like a whole day, even when I was trying to play it for the review and for this video. I just got so frustrated with the fact that major story elements like that are ruined because of this system they brought forward. Even though they added in the dialogue options that let you go towards this path, they still limit you and don't let you kill specific people.
Yeah, what was the there was a game that we had tried, I think Baldur's Gate or something. I liked how I was very, I guess, naive when I first walked through, because they said, oh, you want to save these people? I was like, no. And I just want to walk through. And then you told me later, like, you probably should have. They could have helped you a lot throughout the thing. But I wasn't required to do that. And I liked that. If I just wanted to be by myself, like, I'd have to figure out how to fight and survive on my own, and that'd be fine. I didn't have to have these companions that I didn't care about yet. So if this game has a lot of companions that I am stuck with, that's going to be a struggle for sure.
Well, that's actually one of the parts of the story. They introduce these different companions to you by forcing you to play with them for specific missions. So it's like, oh, this mission you're going to play with this companion. You do not have an option. You do not have a choice. They are going to be with you for this mission. And so that's how they introduce you to the different companions. So if you're someone that doesn't want to play, like there's this cowboy that had a kid, and I just did not care about them at all. But it was, oh, you have to play with this cowboy and his kid. There's no choice. It was like, okay, well, as soon as I can, I'm going to never talk to them again. So they force you to play with the different companions, which really doesn't forcing the player to do something feels pretty bad, and it's quite annoying here.
We are forced to interact with way too many people on a daily basis in just adult life and jobs. When you sit home to a game, you don't want to be forced to hang out with somebody that you don't like. That is a poor choice, I think, for sure.
The story here, though, I think what's probably going to happen is most people with Bethesda games, the main story is not the main reason you play the game. Normally it's because you want to experience the world. So probably most people, they're going to play the story like once and then never really touch it again. So you're going to get to like through the opening section and then just not go through the story anymore. That's what I would imagine most people do once they've beaten it like once.
So it said it was also made by the people who made Skyrim. Is Skyrim your game with the dragon and you're a prisoner at the beginning? And you have to...
Yes.
Okay. Are they made by this, like, absolutely made by the same people, correct? Or is
It's
it like
made-
the same people who publish?
It's made by the same development studio. Now, the development staff, like I'm sure some of them have left since they made that game, but it's made by the same development team, not just the same publisher.
I'm just surprised at the lack of choice with this game because Skyrim does have choices, right? From what I have not played it, but I've watched you play it so much, it seems like there are opportunities to do things on your own.
A lot more, yes. There are some specific situations where you'll need to play with a certain companion, but it's not nearly as prevalent, especially for the main story. Companions aren't really something you need to bother with. The game gives you a companion, but what I normally do is just tell them to wait for me in town, like the same town where you see them. I'm just like, okay, wait here, and then I never interact with them again. So normally, you might be playing with other individuals in a mission, but normally they're not your companions. All I'm thinking there's like one expansion, a DLC, where you rescue someone from a cave, and so while you're rescuing them, they're your companion.
But as soon as you're out of the cave, they're
Yeah,
not,
once
right?
you're out of the cave and you bring them home, they're no longer your companion.
That's every game. That's normal because you're rescuing them. That's part of your quest, but they're not stuck with you for the whole game and you can't get rid of them.
Yeah, I think there's one other mission later in the game where you do have to work with them again. But as far as Skyrim as a whole, generally, you're not really playing with companions as much. There are some like side quest lines where there might be more, but as far as the main story quest line, companions aren't prevalent throughout. It's not a main feature of the game. Not nearly as much as it is here. Like Skyrim, that is one thing where the developers do seem like they've taken a step back. In that game, if you walk around with like magic equipped to your hands and like your spells out, the guards will be like, hey, we don't like you waving those spells around. Or if you use the shouting ability in town, they're like, hey, stop that. Where here, you run around with your gun out, no one says anything, you start shooting at people, again, no one cares. So it's...
And Skyrim is old.
Yeah, Skyrim is really old.
So that's why this one, those clips were definitely a letdown. Trying to get a bit more positive though, like, what would you say was your favorite part of this game? Is there anything?
Well, see, the game isn't bad. It's just fine, which is the
biggest disappointment.
Yeah. So it's a lot of these situations. It's not like the game is just a bad game and no one should play it. Do I think it's probably overpriced and people should probably wait to buy it? Yeah, probably, especially because this is Bethesda. You know they're going to sell you this game in so many different ways over the years. Like, Skyrim has been sold in so many different packaging. It's ridiculous. Anyways, so I feel like this is a situation where it would probably be better to wait. But yeah, it's not a bad game. The shooting here feels really good. And honestly, when I started my New Game Plus and I really knew how to approach the game, I had a much better time. I will say they are very good with some of their environmental storytelling and setting the mood. Sometimes creeping through these like abandoned bases and you're trying to figure out what happened here, and it's like, oh, they were testing on alien specimens, and it's like very much a sci-fi horror movie, which I really like those movies, those thrillers. So they have a lot of stuff there, where there was one platform I found that was just like infested with these creepy creatures, and you found out that this team was drilling through the ice and it happened to open up and all these things came out. It's like, oh, this is the setup for a cheesy thriller movie. And so that is kind of the best time I had, is exploring the world and coming across these stories naturally, because these weren't anything as far as a quest. This was just out in the world exploring and finding these interesting little stories. So there is definitely fun to be had here. It's not a bad game, but it definitely feels like it's behind the times. It feels like an old game, which isn't what most people are expecting. Most people are expecting this to be revolutionary, and it's really not. It doesn't feel like a next-gen game. It
doesn't look like it either, for sure. So, shooting-wise, just kind of comparing it to other games that I've played shooting-wise, like I like how Gears of War have a lot of interactive guns that you could use in the melee way. What kind of guns does this game offer? Or is shooting pretty much all the same type of shooting?
So the shooting here, it's going to be very different from Gears of War. There's not really, like, you can hit people with the butt of your gun, or like pistol whip someone or hit them with like, you can do a melee attack with your weapon, but it's
no cool guns.
There's no guns that have chainswords on them. Like that's not going to be here. But the guns feel pretty good. Like the double barrel shotgun, really like it. There's different assault weapons, submachine guns, energy weapons. There's actually one interesting weapon that does like no damage, but it knocks the person unconscious. So you can then go up, pick their pockets, kill them just while they're down.
I would call that an interesting gun.
Yeah, so there's that. There's like mini guns, there's grenade launchers. There is an interesting variety. There are laser weapons. One issue is that for the first majority of the game, you're only going to see like the same 3 to 4 guns repeated over and over and over again, which does get a little bit old. But there is good gun variety here. And then when the guns drop, they can drop with different rarities, having different special modifiers. So the guns here do feel pretty good to play with, and you're going to have a fun time if you're looking for an FPS game.
Okay. When I play shooting games, I usually tend to have 2 to 3 favorite guns that I look for the most to pick up. Is there a gun that you came across that you think that would be one of my favorites? I think the knockout one sounds hilarious.
So, yeah, you'd probably have fun with that. You'd probably like the double barrel shotgun because you like to get up close and personal.
It's kind of like just a backup. Shotguns are everywhere.
There's probably the minigun because you could just hold down the trigger and just shoot a ton. You don't necessarily
fire.
Yeah, you don't really need to be accurate.
Okay.
I could see you liking that.
I could see that.
Where you could just fire a ton and eventually hit the person.
Yeah. Hit a circle all around them. Definitely. Okay. Yeah, shotguns are, I feel like if I had to pick up a gun that's not my favorite, fine, a shotgun's fine. They're reliable, but
it feels pretty satisfying here. There's different shotguns in here, but the double barrel shotgun feels really satisfying, and the reload animation, like the sound it makes when you're reloading it, is pretty good.
How is the reloading though? Like, is there like an animation on the screen that you have to reload somehow, or is it just reload automatically on your own and there's no consequence if you do it wrong?
So just as context, Gears of War is like her favorite shooting series, and so a lot of her comparisons is coming from Gears of War. No, there's no active reloading in this game.
I loved that though, because if I messed it up, then it actively had a consequence, and I like that.
Here, sometimes when your gun is empty, it won't automatically reload, so sometimes you'll be like ready to shoot someone, but you didn't hit the reload button yourself, and so then you like click, and then it...
Oh, but that's different. That's
right. So like there is no special reload. Just you hit the button and you reload.
It's like a mini puzzle part, though, and that's a bummer.
Most games don't have that.
I love that part, though.
Overall, I think the game, it's a fine game if you want to pick it up. If you're playing this on PC, definitely, where you're someone that likes to use mods, then Bethesda games always have a very active modding community, so a lot of the shortcomings will be able to be fixed by that. And then if you just really like Bethesda games, like you like Skyrim, you like Fallout, you'll probably have a fun time here. If you're looking for a revolutionary game, if you're looking for a new, just genre-defining RPG game, that came out a couple months ago. It was called Baldur's Gate 3. Go play that instead. That's not really what you're going to find here. Don't try to do any creative thinking. Don't try to think outside the box. Just go into this at face value, play the game the way the developers intend, and you'll have a fun time here. Probably don't bother picking up material. That's like the biggest thing. Unless you're planning on focusing heavily on base building or crafting, it normally just fills up your inventory and you're constantly having to deal with your inventory, which is one of the worst parts of the game. Don't bother. Just pick up things that are valuable, consumables, and you'll have a much better time not having to deal with the inventory. Overall, though, yeah, it's fine, but it's not amazing. I wouldn't even say it's great. It's just fine. Do you have any final thoughts, love?
No, I think you summed it up. It's just fine. It's not lame like the mech game. That would be my summary of that. It's lame. It's fine. But I could see it being something fun for other people to play because it's just not my type of game. For me, it's a lame game, but that's just not me. This one, I could see with different elements, I could potentially enjoy the shooting. If you say it feels really good to shoot different things, I would just be let down and disappointed in a couple of the exploration sides of it, for sure. So it's just fine, I think, is a good way to sum it up from my, I guess, first impression of it. I'd have to play it to know more.
All right, so that was this podcast. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We will probably be reviewing Spider-Man 2, probably the next game we take a look at. That's coming out in the end of October, so it'll be a little while. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, definitely like and subscribe, and I hope you all have a great day.